The third June 2019 edition of Monday Night Raw actually has fans talking as the return of The Undertaker and Paul Heyman's announcement that Brock Lesnar would cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase at Raw promises an intriguing show. However, did things live up to the hype, or was this another disappointing WWE show? Join us now as Wrestlelamia discusses how this week's episode of Monday Night Raw was one of the most predictable episodes in history. Tonight's Raw is coming to you from Austin, Texas, and even though Renee Young is still on commentary, there's no definite word on what if any heat is on her for husband Jon Moxley's jump to All Elite Wrestling, as in addition to lying to Vince about defecting to its competition, he's voicing his opinions on the current state of the product and how Vince McMahon needs to step down. But one has to think there exists some tension between her and WWE management. The show started with the big dog Roman Reigns entering the ring as the announcers reminded the fans about Paul Heyman's proclamation that Brock Lesnar is going to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase. Stephanie McMahon has gone on record as complaining about Lesnar's failure to cash in his briefcase/boombox, ignoring the long tradition of the contract being something a superstar can cash in at any time of their choosing. Now, the WWE's lack of continuity is nothing new, but it is a validation of Jon Moxley's comments that WWE creative doesn't have a clue what they're doing when it comes to producing a wrestling show and are merely winging it half the time. So what if he doesn't cash in? Those are the rules, he hasn't broken them. Anyway, Reigns doesn't get a chance to speak as the self-proclaimed best in the world Shane McMahon shows up. WWE has been predictable with Raw opening up the same way for the last few weeks. Another multi-man segment featuring zero wrestling at all. Just once could we open up Raw with an actual wrestling match? Anyway, Shane goes off on Roman, hyping their match this Friday at Super Showdown. Predictably during the segment, McIntyre showed up, getting some cheap heat but telling the fans he doesn't like their attitude or the reaction to him and Shane. Drew and Shane confer and Reigns finds himself blindsided by the revival. Fortunately for Reigns, his cousins the Usos show up for the save. The revival and Drew McIntyre vs Roman Reigns and the Uso goes underway, and it's pretty much what you would expect as the WWE builds up to Super Showdown, but in the end, McIntyre managed to hit the Claymore on Reigns, and the revival delivered a shatter machine on Jimmy while Jay ate a Claymore and counted the lights, as the heels along with Shane McMahon deliver a post-match beatdown on Reigns. Shane actually got a tidy spear in too. Nevertheless, this wildcard rule has become completely predictable, as this must be the fourth consecutive week Roman Reigns has showed up on Raw, and probably the second or third that the Usos have. Wasn't the wildcard rule actually designed so that other wrestlers could get some time on Raw or SmackDown? No, the wildcard rule is completely predictable, and only serves one purpose, having Reigns show up on both shows. It's time for Miz TV, and tonight's guest is the Universal Champion Seth Rollins. Miz asks the obvious, how is Rollins going to deal with Lesnar's threat to cash his briefcase in tonight? Miz mentions Seth's match against Baron Corbin on Friday, but it could all change based on Boombox's cash in tonight. He asks Seth what is going through his mind, and Rollins replies he's a fighting champion and he's got to be prepared for his title defense at Super Showdown against Baron Corbin. Still, he'll be relieved if Lesnar does cash in his contract, as it will allow him to focus on Corbin, assuming he defeats Lesnar. The Lucha House Party featuring Kalisto, Lince Dorado and Gran Metalik prepare to take on an unknown team. But instead their Super Showdown opponent Lars Sullivan shows up, apparently deciding to beat them down again, as he's been doing for the past few weeks, but surprisingly the Lucha team escaped unharmed this week. No doubt Sullivan will save it all for the Super Showdown event. Former SmackDown champion Charlotte Flair shows up to remind the fans she's halfway towards tying her father's 16 world championships. Lacey Evans then tells Charlotte she'd better head back to SmackDown, which of course means the two will lock up tonight, and lock up they do. The match starts, but it's clear from the fans' chants that they want one thing, the man Becky Lynch. The fans ultimately get their wish as Lynch runs in, attacking Charlotte and giving her the disqualification win over Evans, and saving the fans from an awkward looking match. United States Champion Rey Mysterio shows up to announce he is relinquishing the belt due to his injury. However, Samoa Joe tells Rey and the fans that's a lie, as Rey never pinned Joe's shoulders to the mat. Mysterio tells Joe and the fans that he's training Dominic to become a wrestler, and he wants to set an honorable example by relinquishing the belt. However, he'll be back after his injury heals. Samoa Joe rundowns Rey, then beats him down, locking him in the coquina clutch. One can't help but wonder whether it's time for Rey to retire given the frequency of his injuries, as well as the long time he's out of action. WWE could have done something interesting with the United States Championship instead of just handing it back to Samoa Joe. But it looks as if WWE will be building things up for a Samoa Joe vs Dominic program somewhere down the road. We now get an arm wrestling match between Bobby Lashley vs Braun Strowman. Strowman wins the test of strength, but Lashley gets the win in an all-important post-contest beatdown. Lashley throws chalk in Strowman's eyes, then hits him with the running power slam. We then get highlights of 24/7 champion R-Truth relaxing on the golf course with Carmella. Jinder Mahal attacks the champ, pinning him to win the belt. The reign is short-lived as Carmella distracts the former WWE champion, allowing Truth to roll him up for the win, regaining back his title. Carmella and R-Truth manage to escape in the golf cart. While the 24/7 title may be a joke, the WWE's been doing a good job of having fun with it, especially with R-Truth as champion. The next match is between Peyton Royce, who is accompanied by Billie Kay, versus Nikki Cross, who is accompanied by Alexa Bliss. Cross looks like she got hit the hard way as her mouth is bleeding. She lands a hanging neckbreaker on Royce for the pinfall win. After the match, Little Miss Bliss drop kicks Billie Kay, followed by a DDT, as Kay knocked coffee out of her hand during the match and shoved her to the ground. Universal Champion Seth Rollins is clearly getting frustrated with Brock's threat to cash in the briefcase tonight. Rollins calls out the Beast and Lesnar's music plays, but instead of the Beast, Rollins gets Corbin instead. The two brawl until Lesnar's music hits, distracting the champion and setting things up for Corbin to deliver the end of days. Lesnar's music plays yet again, but this time he's here. Lesnar grabs a steel chair and blasts Rollins repeatedly with it before hitting an F5. Heyman tells Lesnar to cash in his contract, but Lesnar confusingly refuses, and Rollins is stretchered out of the arena for medical attention. As predicted by most fans, this was just a simple tease by WWE to garner some ratings, as Brock obviously didn't cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase contract. This wasn't an outright refusal to cash in, but fans were no doubt disappointed at the predictable turnout. Let's hope Brock actually cashes in this Friday at the Super Showdown event. It's now time for another episode of Bray Wyatt's Firefly Funhouse. Bray has Huskus the Pig Boy with him, and it's clear gluttony is getting the better of Bray's friend. Fortunately, Wyatt is there to help him with his problem. Another bizarre but interesting segment that ties in with Bray's past as Husky Harris and also included a Devil McMahon. We'll have another video on this, looking at the hidden messages during this segment. After that, it's time for Triple H to cut a promo, and the fans erupt in NXT chants, apparently eager to thank Triple H for producing good wrestling on the Yellow brand. The Apex Predator then arrives. Thankfully, Triple H keeps things short and promises a beatdown this Friday for Orton. The master of the RKO tells the Cerebral Assassin he's not Batista, he's the Legend Killer. Some back and forth banter that's not YouTube appropriate, and Helmsley leaves. Backstage, Baron Corbin is delighted that Brock Lesnar did a number on Seth Rollins, making him easy pickings for his upcoming match. We then get the final match of the night between the Swiss Cyborg Cesaro vs Ricochet, with Ricochet looking to prove his previous win over Cesaro was no fluke, and prove he does as he upsets Cesaro again with a roll-up. To no one's surprise, Cesaro lays out Ricochet after the match. However, the fans are surprised when Cesaro pulls a table from under the ring, along with 24/7 champion R-Truth. As a small army of wrestlers scramble to get at Truth, Drake Maverick makes it to the ring, only for Carmella to superkick him, allowing Truth to escape. As the show winds down, it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. No, not the end of the show, although that's probably what many of you were thinking. It's time for the Phenom himself, The Undertaker, to return. The dead man's familiar gong sound, The Undertaker makes his 10-minute entrance, and tells Goldberg he doesn't want Goldberg the family man, but the unstoppable icon instead. If Goldberg brings anything less, it'll be his last match. Funny that The Undertaker is trying to retire somebody who's already retired. But what's our final thoughts on the show? Well, WWE painted themselves into a corner with the Lesnar cash-in promise, creating a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation, and it's pretty sure that some people left unhappy. However, tonight's show was pathetically predictable, with numerous interviews interrupted, as well as repeated interferences and endless blindside attacks. Quantity over quality was tonight's theme when it should have been a less is more. Other than the antics of the 24/7 rule, the match between Cesaro and Ricochet, and the Firefly Funhouse episode, the show was pretty awful and predictable. But what are your thoughts, guys? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.